Now, we've already touched on a lot of this, but I want you to see a little bit more detail. The most common claim against business is actually negligence. And it's a kind of an omnibus concept that we're required as business people to be careful, to do what's called reasonable actions, to take reasonable precautions in our business. And this is the general concept of negligence. So we want you to think about this. This is the most common claim against business. And this is a very important slide. This is a slide that shows your prima facie negligence case. You may want to make note of this. It's early in Chapter 9. Alleged tort fees are owed a duty of care to the plaintiff. Now that may be implied. If you're on the roadway driving your car, driving your truck, you owe a duty of care to other drivers. That's it. You decided to get behind the wheel, you owe a duty of care. No special responsibilities tied into that. Through act or omission, breach that duty. The breach of duty was both the actual cause of the injury and the proximate cause of the plaintiff's injury. Now, this gets into some real interesting stuff that they capitalize on in different TV shows. Is, is the person dying from having taken a bad drug and then they get hit by a car? Well, does the person who sold them the bad drug get off because the actual cause of their death was the car accident? So you get into those type of debates about who's responsible when, and then you say, oh, well, but the reason they were walking across the street so slowly so they could get hit by the car was because they had this bad medicine, and they were sick, So the part of the interest, keep in mind, cause is different than the proximate cause, meaning what will directly cause the injury. Sometimes it's not obvious in the connection. And then the plaintiff suffered personal injury or property damage. Just having a tort for fun is no fun. But again, because of allegations like intentional infliction of emotional distress, in some states, even if there's no physical injury, you may be able to recover from, gosh, I was really stressed out because I almost got run over by a car. Not a good argument in Texas, might work in California. Let's talk about duty briefly. So legal requirement, and again, you assume duty generally by taking some action or being in business. There's a special doctrine I want to introduce you to this term. We as lawyers tend to call this res ipsa, but it's actually res ipsa loquitur. Loquitur is speak, and it says the thing, res is thing, the thing speaks for itself. Classic example of this, you have abdominal surgery, you have pain afterwards. So eventually they go in to check and they find a sponge in there left from the previous surgery. Now you were hopefully out cold while they did the surgery, and most likely the surgical team is not going to rat themselves out and say, oh yeah, we knew we left that sponge in there. But most likely the only way you're going to have a sponge in your epidermal tissue under your abdomen is because it was from the previous surgery. Big surprise there. So that argument is going to be res ipsa loquitur, is that surgical team had the opportunity to be in control of the situation and they did not. They allowed something bad to happen. So, and again, as lawyers, we call it res ipsa. And it's oftentimes, that's a very good example of that situation. That also can be negligence per se. In other words, the overall circumstances are such that it's clear that the surgical team was negligent. They failed to exercise ordinary care, which includes counting every single sponge at the operating table. Causation, most likely causation again would be easy in our res ipsa example because, how else did the sponge get into the internal parts of your body? It's not like you could eat it and get it to that point. Did the defendant cause a foreseeable injury, and then connection in time? This is sometimes where you hear these weird cases where somebody gets hurt in an accident, sustain a brain injury, and they're vegetative for a year or 2 years or whatever, and then they pass away. And then the defending company says, well, gee, he died of old age, he died from something else, he died from sepsis. And so then you're going to argue, well, the only reason he was in a hospital bed to die from sepsis is because, know, you had a negligent driver who ran him over or something like that. So that's where you get into this debate about proximate cause. Again, usually if the person just plain got run over, not a big discussion, but sometimes there's overall circumstances where things happen down the road. Or a classic example is you've got somebody out there begging on the street corner, they get clipped by car one. So they're not focused because they've been clipped. Car number two comes by and runs them over. Well, is car number two at fault, car number one at fault? Both. Most likely. But car number two is going to allege that the person wouldn't have been in their path without time to stop had not car number one clipped them and cost them car number two. So you can see how what sounds simple gets complicated in a hurry. Okay. This is another very important slide in Chapter 9. We used to have something called contributory negligence, and the way it worked is if you, the plaintiff, had any part of what happened that was bad, you had a problem. You were in trouble. You couldn't recover. It was viewed as a very negative doctrine, and again, the trend line is in favor increasingly against business and in favor of giving people lots of money. So what happens is that contributory negligence has given way to, in most states, comparative negligence, which is a bullet number 2, and that is if you were 30% negligent, but the other people were 70% negligent, you can recover 70% of your loss from the other two parties that were involved, the other two tortfeasors. So it gives you a more fair distribution per, again, the concepts in most states. Assumption of the risk is interesting, and my best example of this is the state of Colorado. You are absolutely not going to be able to sue a ski resort in Colorado. They have a heavy duty, because skiing is so important to the state, they have a huge protective statute that basically says anything that happens at a ski resort, you agree to it happening to you because you decided to do something stupid like snow skiing or skiing or just wandering around it. Yes, sir?
Will sporting events be the same?
Many sporting events do view it. For instance, you know, you're at the World Series and you get hit by a foul ball. Absolutely, that's the assumption of the risk, is that you know that going to a baseball game, you are liable to be conked with a baseball. And a lot of people think that's really cool. They go to the game with their glove and all that. But yeah, it's the same concept, assumption of the risk. In this how extreme it is, last season or season before, a ski lift failed and some people got shaken off the lift. I think the lift actually failed. To me, that's a clear-cut negligence case. I don't think that should be under assumption of the risk. What I heard in the news is that was viewed as assumption of the risk, even though the ski lift itself failed due to most likely poor maintenance. Yeah, poor maintenance. So, but now that may not mean you may not be able to sue the ski lift operator. You may be able to sue the ski lift manufacturer. So there might be a backdoor way to get in there. But again, so watch for that concept. So again, this is a good slide here from Chapter 9. Strict liability is the bane of manufacturers and companies that sell manufactured products. Best example of this is the good old American lawnmower. You know, when I was a kid and still cut grass, you know, you went pull the cord, things started, you know, cut off a few feet, you know, it wasn't any big throw. Just the way it was. So now today we have the sophisticated lawnmower with blade brakes and double handles and flaps over everything and all that stuff. And, you know, and that is considered the standard of care today. So if you made an old-fashioned lawnmower, you'd probably be sued into oblivion if anybody gets hurt because you didn't take all of these steps. And if you notice, there's a bunch of decals on the new lawnmower. Do not put your hand under you. Okay. I think I could have figured that out without the decal. I mean, stuff like that. So anyway, the idea of strict liability is you made it, you had the last opportunity to meet current day standards. Now this has become such a punishing doctrine that we actually had to bail out the American aviation industry, not Boeing, but Cessna, Beechcraft, stopped producing planes because they were getting sued for planes that failed 40 years after they made them. So So I think Congress passed a law that said 10 years is the maximum look back on small planes, which has allowed the industry, but they're saying more than half the cost of a Cessna or these small planes is insurance, even with the congressional 10-year look back limitation. So again, this is something we all need to deal with as business people. Comparative fault. Did the plaintiff alter the product? Most of these defenses, by the way, folks, don't work. So if you'll read the slide carefully, it says pretty much, you made it, you're stuck, somebody gets hurt, you need to be, you're going to end up responsible, and that's why we all buy an insurance out there.